Hi there and welcome back to Crypto-Acade. Now, in the previous video, we went over some of the basics of support and resistance and how it is a floor or the ceiling or a supply and demand zone. And so in this video, what we want to do is dig in a little bit deeper and talk about different types of support and resistance. Now remember, these are foundational pillars to technical analysis, and so it may seem a little difficult at first, but the more you practice, the better you get at something. And being able to identify and draw support and resistance is a key foundational pillar to a strategy. So here we're taking a look at cryptocurrency Link, and in the previous video we had talked about horizontal levels of support and resistance. And so we've got a horizontal level right here, which is guarded by this peak. This peak that was acting as resistance, price broke up above the resistance, and then it came back to retest this as support, not once, but twice and 3 times. And so here is a horizontal level of support and resistance. And that's what we talked about in the first video. Well, there's more than just horizontal levels out there. Horizontal levels are a little bit easier to find because they're horizontal, and you could look for swing highs, peaks, and valleys to help you identify where those levels might be. Other horizontal levels that are what I would consider to be hidden levels, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but for example, Fibonacci retracement levels. So I want to use my Fibonacci retracement tool from this low up here to this high, and what it will do is it will draw levels that are horizontal on the chart where prices may come back and retrace to. And so, here from this low up to this high, it showed that these are various levels where prices may retrace to, and it came back and it nailed this 38% retracement level and then rallied from there. So that's another level of horizontal support and resistance that's not obvious. You could consider it to be hidden. Pivot points is another tool that you could add to your chart, which are non-obvious hidden levels of support and resistance. Okay, but these are all horizontal. You notice that the lines move straight across the chart. Okay, now there are other levels of support and resistance which are not horizontal, and these are going to have more of a slant to them. So let me remove some of these things. So for example, if I take a look at this low here, and then this low here, I'm going to draw a line connecting those two lows. Okay, so I draw a line connecting those two lows. Now, a lot of the charting tools will allow you to come out here and extend the line to the right or to the left. In this case, I'm going to extend the line to the right, and you'll notice that this line gets extended into infinity up to the right, and price came down and it retraced right to that line, and then it began to bounce higher. So this is another level of support and resistance that you want to be familiar with. And in order to draw trend lines, what you want to do is you want to look for 2 to 3 common points that if you were to draw a line, that line would pass through them. And so in this case, I started off with those 2 points and extended the line. It takes 2 points to draw a line, and then you're going to make that trade on that 3rd or 4th touch of the line. So for example, if Link were to come back down, test this line again, then that could be another opportunity to buy. And because remember from the previous video, support is that area where sellers tend to stop selling and buyers begin to buy. And when those levels are horizontal, like what we see here in the box, it's pretty obvious. It's the same price level, this $1.52. But when you've got a slanted trend line, it's not as obvious because that level down here was near 13.24. But if prices were to revert lower and come back down to this line, it would now be at about 24.29. And so when you're in a strong uptrend like what we see with many of the cryptocurrencies, these trend lines can be very valuable tools to help you identify where to buy and get into some of these strong uptrends. So let's look at another example. Here's an ETH example. Now remember, when you draw a trend line, what you want to do is you want to find a couple of common points that pass through. And so a couple of these common points that I see here is obviously we've got this low here, we've got this low here, this low here, and this low here. So we've got a line that is produced, or at least a market, Ethereum, that is produced 4 touches of this particular line. So again, if prices were to retrace back down to this line, and this line currently sits near, it kind of depends on when and where it would reach it, but probably in the upper 3s. If Ethereum were to sell off and come back to this line, this would be an area we could consider a buying opportunity. So remember, you want to buy at support, and then you want to sell at resistance. Okay, support is that area where buyers start to buy and sellers stop selling. Resistance is that area where sellers start selling and buyers stop buying. So buy at support, sell at resistance. So we've got this trend line showing up here. Now these trend lines can also appear on a variety of time frames. Well, let's take a look here at another chart. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Okay, and what we were talking about in the previous video about when a support or resistance line gets broken. So let's say a support line gets broken, it can act like new resistance. And so here's a situation. Let me zoom this out to a daily. Here's a situation where if we draw a support trend line connecting these 2 lows here, prices came down, found a little bit of support off of this on the 3rd touch, rallied a little bit, and then fell through. Now this was a support line, it broke, and so therefore it will act like new resistance into the future, and that's exactly what's been happening here. Now when you've got an upward sloping trend line like this, selling the underside of this is less lucrative, because obviously you could have come up here, and let me zoom in, but you could have come up here and you could have sold on the first touch right here. But notice that the price would have kept going higher and it still would have remained underneath the resistance line. And so doing the opposite, and in this case, when that support level was broken and using it as resistance to sell, when it's a sloping trend line, is not as lucrative as the horizontal support and resistance levels are. So there you have it. Here's a little bit about support and resistance. Support and resistance is a foundational pillar to any type of strategy. These support and resistance levels you can draw on charts, and I would encourage you to learn how to do that, how to identify your own levels of support and resistance. There are some other tools, however, that can be applied to the charts that will draw support and resistance on there automatically. So if you feel a little bit overwhelmed about the support and resistance and having to go out and try to draw these on your own, then don't worry. It comes with practice. The more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. However, it also gets easier because there are tools out there. And the next video is one that we're going to talk about it, where it will apply support and resistance to the chart automatically. And I'm talking about the moving averages. Now it's an algorithm, it's a mathematical calculation. So on the one hand, it can provide solid levels of support and resistance, but then on the other hand, it can give you false signals too. That's the downside of using the mathematical algorithms, and where maybe visually identifying and spotting support and resistance on your own might be better. So something to keep in mind, but that is up for the next video. So hope you like what you see here. We will see you in the next video where we're going to talk about moving averages.